You're very welcome along. So, around 5 o'clock this evening, Friday evening, I suspect you've seen at this stage, a verdict was reached in the civil action taken by Nikita Hand against Conor McGregor and James Lawrence. In the case of Conor McGregor, Nikita Hand has won her case. The jury concluded McGregor did assault her in December of 2018. The jury found that Lawrence did not assault her. The Sunday Independent's Mark Tighe is with us. Mark has covered and attended this case in conjunction with other journalists at the Independent. Mark, hi.
Hey Joe, yeah, high wire stuff this evening and today, yeah.
Just to say at the outset, this conversation will obviously pertain to the case. It's of a mature nature, and equally, if you're likely to find the topic difficult, then do proceed with caution. And there is the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre website, drcc.ie, which has information you might find useful. Mark, the jury deliberated from yesterday, Thursday, into today for a total of 6 hours, 10 minutes. There was I think the judge at one stage sent them back to keep deliberating. I suspect keen for a verdict today, and we have a verdict.
Yeah, I think the jury were keen to get done. They came back at lunchtime, just before lunchtime, and saying they just wanted half an hour for lunch. So that was always a good indication. Usually they take the full hour to have a break. A couple of them were having cigarette breaks at times, but yeah, they were keen to work through it this morning. They let us know they wanted a HDMI cable and a big monitor to watch the CCTV footage, which is a key part of the case. But yeah, they were clearly keen to get through it. They're a very diligent jury. You could see how focused they were, and yeah, you could see it was interesting when they came out. Some of the women I thought were maybe a bit looked disappointed in the jury, and that I think they were happy that you could. I always thought those women were very strong supporters of Nikita. They were constantly looking at the photo book from the guards, of all her bruises, the injuries she suffered, and I thought maybe they were a little bit disappointed on at the final quantum or the final amount of the damages at $250,000. But we can get into that. I suppose that's kind of that's what it came down to. Like, this is a civil action. This isn't a criminal case. So what was on trial here was whether McGregor would be civilly liable for assault, and he was accused of raping. That was the type of assault he was accused of, rape of Nikita Hand. So that's what they did find. They found that he did assault her, and obviously that's on a balance of probabilities, which has to be kind of 51%, just more likely than not the criminal standard of proof, which would be beyond a reasonable doubt. So a very different threshold that would have applied. And we know in this case that there was a Garda investigation. McGregor was arrested, but the DPP decided not to prosecute her complaint of rape against Conor McGregor.
Mr. Justice Owens, ahead of the announcement of the verdict, said he wanted no scenes in what was a very packed courtroom. Give us a sense of the reaction of plaintiff and, of course, McGregor and Lawrence as verdicts were read out.
Yeah, today was really extraordinary. Like, for the last 3 weeks, Conor McGregor has been sat at the back of the court. He only missed one day earlier this week when the judge was summing up, but he'd been in every day, and his dad would sit on his left. He'd have a lawyer on his right, and James Lawrence would be further on his dad's side on his left. But today there was a huge entourage came in at 10 a.m. Dee Devlin, Conor McGregor's longtime fiance and mother of his 4 children. She was there beside him, his mother, one of his sisters, their partners. There was a huge entourage. Philip Sutcliffe, his former boxing coach, who's a Dublin City Councillor, who's running in the general election. He was there in a green cap. He sat in James Lawrence's seat. So all of a sudden there was this massive McGregor entourage there, and the jury saw that when they came in at 10 a.m. Just the judge to tell them, can you resume your deliberations? They looked over and they saw, whoa, there's Dee Devlin. If you could see they were taking, she'd kind of been one of the characters in this, that he'd made lots of references to her, that they've been going out since he was a teenager, and there she was supporting her man. So that was kind of a little message, a show of strength from McGregor, that he had his partner there supporting him through this. For the most of the day, then McGregor's entourage, when the jury were deliberating, they went up to a hotel around the back of the forecourts, where they stayed, and And they came back in just before the jury gave their verdict. And yeah, McGregor was, and you could see Nikita Hand as well. She was sipping from her water. Her hands were shaking. She was very nervous, head down. You know, she's someone who suffers from anxiety. You could see she was very anxious. And McGregor, he was so emotional. Yeah, he was a bit distraught. He was taking huge, deep. The courtroom was silent, and all you could hear was Conor McGregor going, trying to catch his breath. Trying to calm himself. And his mother was grabbing one side of him, and his partner, his fiance Dee Devon, was grabbing the other side of him. So he was taking lots of deep breaths, putting his eyes up to heaven, clenching his jaw. He was very nervous. And then the jury came out. The foreman handed over the verdict. Judge Owens warned people if there was any misbehavior, they'd be spending some time in jail. So there was a number of Gardaí, as there has been throughout the case, a larger number of Gardaí there today because of the crowd that were there, than the onlookers, the gawkers, the fans that were there. And when they said that the first question, did Conor McGregor assault Nikita Hand, and the answer was yes, McGregor couldn't believe it. His head sunk. He put his head in his hands. He was distraught. He was shaking his head. He just he just couldn't believe it. He was dumbfounded. And his partner and his mother were trying to console him. And actually James Lawrence, wherever he'd been, I don't think he was there for the verdict. He came in maybe a minute or two later, and at that stage he didn't hear that the rape assault allegation against him had failed. That he'd been cleared of that allegation. And then they went on to the amounts, and they went into the details. I have them here. They decided that they give 60,000 in general damages, 4,557 and 64 cent in medical expenses, loss of earnings 135,000 and 26 euro, loss of earnings into the future 50,000, aggravated damages nil, exemplary damages nil. So it's quite a nuanced and very, we'll be raking over this for some time, how the jury came to this, because even now both sides were like, ooh, and what does this mean? It's for a rape / assault case, which is predicated on rape. That is a low award in terms of the general damages. One person on McGregor's side said to me, you'd get that for a whack in the face, a punch in the face. So it's relatively low. But on Nikita Hand's side, I was talking to them, and they were just relieved that she won. They said yes, it's maybe not as much as they expected, but the important thing was that she's been vindicated. This is never about money for her. This is always about vindication. That she'd gone through what she says is 6 years of hell. Details have come out this evening that we can now report about her partner being assaulted. Masked men breaking into their house. We don't know, and there's no suggestion Conor McGregor was involved in that in any way. But there are people who have maybe targeted them because they knew she was taking this case, and she's had to move out of her that part of Dublin 12. So this is never about the money for Nikita Hand. She has been awarded €250,000, which is still a substantial sum of money, and she has been vindicated. A jury has heard all the evidence, heard Conor McGregor's well-paid legal team. Some of the Remy Farrell made an amazing closing speech, I thought. Michael Staines, the top criminal lawyers, was running this case, even it was a civil action. And despite all that, Nikita Hand was believed. They found that she was assaulted. They did believe her, and she's been vindicated. So their overriding feeling was just relief that she's been vindicated.
Yes, just to elaborate on that point you made, because I suspect it caught people's ears. So we were not allowed to report on this until today. So Hand moved out of her house earlier this year because a group of men entered her property wearing balaclavas. They stabbed her partner. They broke her windows.
Mm-hmm.
Now, her lawyers told the High Court, as you've said as well, that they were not making the claim that McGregor had anything to do with the incident, or indeed James Lawrence, at her house in Drimnagh in June. And so therefore, Mr. Justice Owens ruled the evidence was irrelevant to the case and should not go before the jury. The jury did not hear about this. During the trial, they had heard that Miss Hand was making a claim for the costs of relocating and buying a house in a different area, but they were never told why that claim was being made. But it has been an aspect of her experience around this case, to say the very least. we're going in a moment to hear what she had to say to the press afterwards, Mark. What was her reaction in court when the verdict was read aloud?
It was hard for me to see where I was sitting. So I didn't get. I was concentrating on McGregor. He was closer to me, so he had my full attention. So I just think she was relieved. Yeah, I didn't get a full spec on her because I had my eyes focused on McGregor's, to be honest, and the jury. Afterwards, she was just overwhelmed. I think to have won and been vindicated because so much was on the line for her. You could see that she was sipping from this little bottle of Ballygowan. She was barely able to get it into her mouth because her hand was shaking too much. So there was just so much riding on this, for her reputationally. And I know just before the clip you're about to play, I was standing beside her and a woman said, we believe you, Nikita, and, Nikita slowed down and even like all the press of the world flashing at her and she was doing, thank you, so I think, the fact that the jury believed her and, so many people believe her and she's been getting so much support. I just think the relief is the overwhelming emotion for Nikita Hand and all her family. Like one of her family or supporters was taking a selfie when the whole court had cleared out at the end. He took a selfie in the courtroom. They're just, I don't know, elated, to have won despite what they felt was like insurmountable odds. Like she'd given out about the DPP not prosecuting the case because she said because Conor McGregor was a famous person, So I think she always felt that she was David taking on Goliath here, and to come out the other side of that with a victory, I think is just huge relief.
Well, emotion to the fore when she spoke to the press afterwards.
I'm overwhelmed and touched by the support I have received from everybody. First, I want to thank the Coleman legal team and my 3 barristers, John Gordon, Ray Boland and Sean. They have been amazing from start to finish. I want to thank Mr. Justice Alexander Owens, the jury, all the witnesses. I want to thank the doctors, nurses and everyone at the sexual assault treatment unit and the Rotunda Hospital for looking after me, especially my own doctor, Frank Clark. I want to thank the Rape Crisis Centre, especially Cleena, who has been by my side throughout this entire period. I want to thank all the guards and the ambulance crew. I want to thank all the women and men out there who have supported me throughout this trial. For every person who reached out to me, a card, a letter, email, everything, it hasn't gone unnoticed. Thank you, I really appreciate it so much. I want to thank my partner Gary, who has been so supportive for the last 4 years and has held my hand throughout this trial every day and every other day. I want to thank my mum and all my family and friends. Lastly, I want to thank my daughter Freya, who I'm most grateful for. She has given me so much strength and courage over the last 6 years throughout this nightmare to keep on pushing forward for justice. I want to show Freya and every other girl and boy that you can stand up for yourself if something happens to you, no matter who the person is, and justice will be served. To all the victims of sexual assault, I hope my story is a reminder that no matter how afraid you might be, speak up, you have a voice, and keep on fighting for justice. I know this has impacted not only my life, my daughters, my family and friends tremendously, and it's something that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. But now that justice has been served, I can now try and move on and look forward to the future with my family and friends and daughter.
So you can hear there, Mark, the toll the whole thing has taken, no doubt, the ordeal, and we're talking about a situation, obviously, which goes back 2018. It's a very long time to be caught up in the midst of this kind of a process. So the breakdown of damages, the €250,000 effectively, 248,603 and 60 cents. So 60,000, as you said, in general damages, loss of earnings, medical expenses, loss of future earnings. These are the areas where money has been given, but no aggravated damages, no punitive damages awarded. Yeah. And you said there's a nuance to this financial award. Do you have an interpretation of it? Like, what's your sense of what that means? What's the jury trying to say here?
Yeah, and look, here we are in the realms of speculation, but I suppose I have experience of juries, and you find out some of the mad things that go on before. We were all reading body language over the last 3 weeks, and there was definitely a group of, the jury was 8 women, 4 men, And I definitely felt the majority of the women were clearly in Nikita Hand's favour from very early on. Even when the judge was summing up the case and talking about different parts of the evidence, some of the women were opening those picture books again with the bruises, concentrating on that. And at one stage, there were so many gawkers, people who were there kind of just looking on from the balcony, and they were shielding the picture books from people above so they couldn't see the pictures, because obviously, they were showing Nikita Hand's, one of the injuries she had was an injury on her breast. A scratch, she said, was caused by her own watch, when she said McGregor was pressing down on her, putting her in this neck chokehold from behind. So you could see they were sensitive to her. Like, she sat right in front of the jury. I don't know if that was strategic, that she was so close. McGregor was further away behind her to the right, so further away from the jury. When her employer came over and had finished his evidence, her former employer at the hairdressers, he went up and he shook her hand and grabbed her on the shoulder and wished her luck. You could see the jury, the women looking down, kind of smiling at her, going, that's a nice touch. So, look, in terms of the award, these things can be crazy in terms of what happens in a jury room. We don't know. Like, that's one of the frustrating parts of the Irish justice system, that judges have to explain themselves, to a court of appeal, so they can pick through it and see if they follow the law and done justice. In this case, it's a black box. The judge gives her instructions, and we've been given the verdict, but we won't get an explanation. I can only speculate. It could have been that there were holdouts. Maybe some of the men didn't want to go with the verdict at all. Maybe they said, we'll go with it, but we're going to a lower amount. One of the very strange parts of this case was that Nikita Hand said she didn't believe that James Lawrence had sex with her. So that if he didn't have sex, which would have been non-consensual sex, because she didn't remember it, and she said she wasn't in a position. Her case was that she wasn't in a position to consent. She was so drunk on cocaine and on this bender for a day and a half. That's why she was accusing him of assault and rape in the civil case. So the jury, it's so unusual that Lawrence had put himself in the frame. He said, we had sex. So if they believed him and didn't believe her, it was complete back to front. So maybe they said, look, we believe she was assaulted by McGregor, but we don't believe what happened with Lawrence happened, or we don't believe there was this concoction of a story, but something bad went on in that room, and we're going to give her compensation. So they could have fudged it like that. Like, the fact that they haven't given any exemplary damages or special damages, and that's something that her barrister said should be awarded, because he was saying, he was alleging that McGregor and Lawrence had concocted the story, where Lawrence would come forward as a patsy, someone to take the fall and to get McGregor off the hook with the criminal investigation. He said McGregor only mentioned Lawrence the first time at his third interview with the guards when he was arrested in January 2019. So, look, we're only in the realms of speculation. Only the jury can tell us why they came to that. But look, it is low. It's no, in terms of a rape, in terms of the general damage, €60,000 is low for that kind of assault being proven or upheld by a jury in a civil case. So it's a bit of a head scratcher, yeah.
Okay, it will remain open to speculation or interpretation. Legal costs, obviously, High Court expenses are very, very, very significant, estimated somewhere between 1.5 million. That will be decided next week. Am I right to assume winner does not pay her costs? McGregor will pay the costs? Is that how this works generally?
McGregor will have to pay Nikita Hand's costs. I think that's the general rule. The winner does not pay their own costs. The loser does. The one complication here is that Lawrence was cleared, and McGregor was paying his costs as well. So that's something that will be up again for McGregor's team to argue, and they might also bring in this issue, that the award was quite low in terms of, what was alleged, the seriousness of the assault. So they might try and get off it. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, McGregor is going to have to pay nearly all of Nikita Hand's substantial costs, which will probably dwarf the damages that she said. As I said, like 3 weeks in the High Court. And this case has been running for 6 years, or sorry, less than that, maybe 4 to 5 years. I'd be surprised if the legal costs weren't north of €1 million on this. So, and McGregor will have to foot the full extent of that, or close to the full extent of that, once the judge decides.
You may have been out there, or you may have seen it on television subsequently. He left the court with his partner G. Devlin and his father, and there's a huge media scrum. And yeah, I've seen it on Sky Sports where their reporter is asking him extremely pointed questions and labeling him now, as I suspect people will label him going forward. And he made no comment. And he's subsequently taken to X and he has said, "I will be appealing today's decision. The judge's instruction and the modest award given was for assault, not for aggregated or exemplary damages. I'm disappointed the jury did not hear all of the evidence that the DPP reviewed. I'm with my family now, focused on my future. Thank you for all my support worldwide." So if we take that at face value and he follows through in how he's feeling right now, an appeal imminent at some stage.
Yeah. I spoke to McGregor briefly after, just asked him would he talk to us, and he said no. He was upset still. He went in and consulted with his lawyers for about 5 minutes or so, and then he sat down with his family for a few minutes, trying to compose himself before they made the run to the Rolls Royce outside. From what I hear from McGregor's side is, Conor is, one of them said Conor is screaming for an appeal. He's furious that the way it went, and that's kind of an interesting remark about the judge's charge, and I'll be right about this for the Sunday Independent. Like, it was Judge Alexander Owens who ran the case, a very interesting guy. Like by far, I thought Remy Farrell for McGregor made the strongest closing speech. Gordon, who was the barrister for Nikita Hand, I thought was, there was points where McGregor was on the rack, and I thought where he was pinning it to him, saying he was devious, a liar. And then he kind of moved on and kind of bored the jury for an hour talking about actuaries and the evidence from the guy who evaluated the price of the house. The judge did make some very pointed comments in his charge to the jury, and I think that resonated with the jury. And I felt that was a key moment in the trial, where he talked about rape myths. Like, one of the pillars of the argument that Conor McGregor made was that what woman, when she's been allegedly battered and raped, will then seek to party with that person and, according to the CCTV, kind of flirt and maybe attempt to kiss him and, want to continue with them. And they, like, McGregor's side was confident, like, that they would win today. They were very confident.
Right.
They, I speak.
Why do you say that, Mark?
Why were they confident?
Yeah. What are you basing that on? You spoke to them, or
speak to them
right.
today? Like, I was having chats with a number of them today, and they were very confident. Like Remy Farrell's final statement had been, if my client was anyone else, you wouldn't let the door of the jury room hit you on the backside before he came out and dismissed the case. And that wasn't just kind of hyperbole. That was something his whole legal team and all his supporters believed. They thought that the CCTV was so conclusive that, what woman would continue to act in the manner that Nikita Hand did in CCTV, where she was still friendly, flirtatious with, at first McGregor and then James Lawrence in the hours after she'd been allegedly brutally raped. And they just thought the CCTV was conclusive on that, and Lawrence's evidence. But this is where the judge came into. The judge said, there are rape myths, and you do not know how a rape victim will act after a rape. And especially a person who'd been on a 36-hour bender. He said, you can wake up. He said, you don't. And Remy Farrell said, there was no evidence about memory loss and how memory can switch on, switch off. He accused her of having selective amnesia. But the Judge Owen said, everyone knows you can wake up after being on a bender and not remember things straight away. And, if you've been through a traumatic event, Judge Owen said, it is possible to forget things, or you don't know how a person in that situation will act. So I thought that kicked away two of the major pillars in McGregor's defense, and the judge had kind of undermined their argument. So I'm hearing that for the first time, what McGregor said on X, I imagine that's going to be a big part of his appeal. And I think that it will be inevitable that he will appeal, because he is fuming, he is furious. You could see that on him in the courtroom and in the surrounding areas after. So yeah, I'm not surprised. Nikita Hand's side, to speak to them briefly, they thought there wouldn't be an appeal, but just look, McGregor has the financial money and firepower, and he will take this on to try and clear his name.
Yeah, I suspect so. I mean, we may chat about the wider implications for McGregor next week, but this is global news all of a sudden. Huge implications for him. a man with, I suspect, the beginning of burgeoning acting career. We see him in a movie this year. I mean, what this does to his career remains to be seen, but it's significant. So I share your sense. It wouldn't be surprising if he thought there was a potentially successful appeal. He might explore that avenue. Um, so you sat in for the vast majority of the days across these 3 weeks. The rest of us obviously read the dispatches, and so it can be difficult to interpret things like body language. I mean, what you've said about the jury is very striking, very interesting. I spoke to a seasoned reporter who was there every step of the way and felt that McGregor, how did he put it? He said, McGregor, his words actually and his testimony, his sworn testimony, came across in writing reasonably well, but he felt in person it did not come across nearly as well. That McGregor did not land well with the jury. It was his opinion, but he used words like arrogant, for instance, to describe McGregor's contribution.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that completely. He was there in his suit, three-piece suit and the big watch, and there was McGregor's a showman. He's made his name because the way he speaks, kind of that sing-song way he speaks, and he can rattle things off very quick. And as soon as he was cross-examined, it kind of was okay. I think initially when he was talking to his own barrister, Remy Farrell, but even then he was talking about these two lovely ladies, and for a majority jury of majority women, Remy Farrell even mentioned this. He said we could hear the intake of breath from you in the jury when he talked about the lovely ladies, and
because it mightn't be language loved at the best of times, but under the circumstances.
Yeah, and there was and this feeds in a bit to when he was cross-examined by John Gordon for Nikita Hand, and he was pressing him about he said, why didn't you hand over your phone? I thought you were trying to be really open with the guards, and McGregor, the mask dropped. This is the way Gordon put it in his closing speech. McGregor's kind of friendly rapporteur, just it went, and he cursed, and he said, I want everything. I want in that she was sucking his fucking cock in the back of the taxi. He said, and this is evidence that was not in the case. And the judge told McGregor to restrain himself. This is an allegation that there was a statement from a taxi driver that Nikita Hand started performing oral sex on James Lawrence when they left the hotel and then came back to the room. And it wasn't evidence in the case. And this is what McGregor's referring to in his statement tonight. And Lawrence didn't give evidence about this. So, and the judge in his closing speech said, you have to ignore that outburst from McGregor. And that did not go down well for the jury. That kind of, vitriol, as Gordon described it, coming across at Nikita Hand. It was shocking, that he would behave like that when his reputation is on the line, and the switch did flick there, and you could see a bit of that temper.
Yes, well, part of Remy Farrell's closing argument, Mark, was in effect, you don't have to like my client. I mean, that was quite a telling line of thinking here. Almost an acknowledgement on his part that parts of this have not gone well. You don't have to like him, but that's not what you're deciding.
Yeah, I thought it was an excellent closing speech from Remy Farrell. He was lancing the boil, taking it on, head first. Saying, "Look, my client, you probably loathe him, you probably hate him. This guy is not a nice guy. Well, probably the majority think that. Some of you might think he's great, but it's not his reputation or his manner or his support for certain political parties or the way he's talked about refugees, whatever you might like or not dislike about him. So he tried to take that on head first, and he talked about how some of McGregor's language referring to the ladies and the way he'd go around, or that he might like getting sex, or that he's cheating on his partner. He said none of that's that's not what on trial here. It's not his ethical or moral behavior or what we think of Conor McGregor the person. It's do the facts support the allegation? And he was saying all the facts. You know, if you see, like, particularly the CCTV, he was saying all the facts support that Nikita Hand was having a good time when she went up and when she came back down from this hotel room. So he was saying, you know, these silent witnesses, or these witnesses that can't be argued with, are showing that my client is innocent, you know, of the charge, that my client shouldn't be found liable here. So it was I thought it was a very strong argument. So, you know, I thought Gordon won it back some way, and I definitely think the judge's charge had a big role in kind of addressing some of the defense's case. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like, the judge said this, you know, to the jury, imagine the Court of Appeal are in the room with you as you're going through your verdict, but you know, it'll be the judge's charge, I think, which is all on transcript, that they'll be picking over as well when McGregor takes this inevitable appeal, that he's raged, and he'd be in there tomorrow, I think, if he could, you know, because he did not expect to lose, and he's a very annoyed and angry person right now over the way that the way the jury went in the end.
Okay. So this ordeal quite probably not over. You'll be writing about it in the Sunday Independent, more considered thoughts and reporting. Any final overarching thoughts on the whole ordeal, where really, I mean, there are no winners. This it's just an atrocious situation. Even you could see in Hand's comments afterwards, which we've played, the toll it's taken on her. So just a very ugly 3 weeks, and in some respects 6 years.
Yeah. Look, I hope she gets some solace for her. I had a lot of sympathy for her. You know, there were bits of the defense's case where, you know, there was a bit where they played a 40-minute video of her ex-partner had recorded of her when she came back from the night, and you know, she was in such tears, and you know, the defense played it because they said, oh, look, she's telling lies to her partner about what hotel she was in or who she was with. You know, she's still concocting lies, they were saying. But right. You know, what I took from that was like, this is a traumatized woman, you know, and I think that backfired, because you could hear just the distress she was in. She was talking about she was raped, and she was afraid to say who had done. She didn't mention McGregor's name once, and you know, in court it was hard to get this over in print. But you know, it was in double stereo. You had, you know, we were listening to Nikita Hand crying on the recording on the 4 speakers, and she was crying listening to it again in the witness box. And you know, I just felt, you know, she's been through so much, you know, and having listened to it, I believed her, you know, that, and the physical evidence was just, there was no getting away from the physical evidence, you know, that the bruises, the bruising around the neck, the you know, graphic, this awful thing about the tampon being shoved up in her vagina, you know, and McGregor only belatedly saying, oh, that wasn't there, that was never a part of his original defense. You know, I think when you stand back from it, the cold light of day, you know, you had to believe that what happened in that room wasn't proper, you know, and that's what the jury considered in the end. So my take on it was that the jury came to the right decision in what they did. The numerical decisions they came to are interesting. Look, we'd all love to know a bit more how they got there, but I think, you know, the justice system has probably got to the right verdict in the end of it, you know.
Mark Tighe, thanks so much. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Joe.